Good evening and a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Economic Forum, where we focus on all things relating to the economy. My name is Farai Boise. Feel free to also be part of the conversation. Get a hold of us on our social media. That's at Economic Forum Zimbabwe. And also send us your WhatsApp messages for your questions and contributions during the course of the program. On tonight's show, we're going to be looking very closely at a concern that has been raised by the general public in line with the acquisition of school uniforms at various institutions, and also appreciating the complexity that comes with availability of school-going material, but at the same time the pricing and costing for children who will be making their way to school during this particular period of time. I'm currently joined in studio by Cecilia Mashava, who is the Assistant Director of Restrictive Practices Division for the Competition and Tariff Commission. Cecilia, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thank you, Farai, for accommodating us.
Thank you.
Sure.
Please tell us a bit about the Competition and Tariff Commission, its role and its function.
All right. The Competition and Tariff Commission is a regulatory authority that administers two mandates, one which is the competition mandate and the trade tariffs mandate. And the two mandates ensure economic development of the country through enforcing the competition law and policy of the country, which provides for promotion and maintenance of competition in all sectors of the economy. The mandate, which is the trade tariffs mandate, is there to ensure that the local industry is competitive when we look at import competition. So we use the tariff function, which is the customs duties, to see to it that we make our industry competitive by reviewing those tariffs upwards or downwards, depending with what we are dealing with. So from the trade tariffs mandate, what the Commission does is when the local industry is suffering from unfair import competition, either there are foreign products that are coming into the country, probably duty-free, which are finished products competing with our local products, then the Commission can do its assessment, and we can review the tariffs upwards so that our local companies can be able to compete on the domestic market. And also when there are raw materials coming into the country with higher duties, the tariffs division of the Competition and Tariff Commission can recommend for review of those duties for raw materials so that we can be able as a nation to produce products that can be competitive on the domestic market. And coming to the competition side of things, the Commission uses the competition law, which is the Competition Act, Chapter 14, 28, to ensure that there is fair competition in all sectors of the economy of Zimbabwe. So in accordance with the Competition Act, Chapter 14, 28, the Commission has got powers to investigate any restrictive business practices that are taking place in the country. And these practices come in various forms. We look at abuse of dominance practices or abuse of monopoly practices, which include exclusionary conducts by firms where they are trying to exclude other rivals in the market so that they can acquire market power, which they can use to force their competitors out of the market. And that market power can be used to exploit consumers, to exploit suppliers in the markets, and that is not good for the economy. And we also investigate anti-competitive agreements between companies. You know, when we have got companies coming together, agreeing not to compete, that can be detrimental to the economy, it can be detrimental to consumer welfare. We look at horizontal agreements, which are agreements between competitors where they can agree not to compete in terms of pricing, and usually companies that are competing can agree to fix the price that they are going to charge for the product that they are producing. And when they do that, it means that consumers will be subject to monopoly pricing in the market. And we also investigate agreements between competitors to allocate markets where they can decide that Company A is operating, say, in the Mashava region, Company B is operating in Matebeleland, Company C is serving the Harare region. And what that means is that we'll have monopolies in each of those geographic areas where competitors will have agreed to allocate markets. And definitely we all know the harm that is caused by monopolies in markets. They are not efficient.
Now, appreciating, of course, that you mainly do deal with the companies, as you clearly put it out. How then does the Tariff Commission tie itself to the concern that has come up with institutions of education?
We've noted that schools they've opened up outlets. They are now selling uniforms. So they are now engaging in commercial activities which fall under the purview of the Competition Act. The fact that they are engaging in commercial activities means now they have to be answerable to the Commission. They are now a supplier like any other supplier in the market. Right. And in their conduct when they are selling uniforms, then they have to abide with the provisions of the Competition Act.
Right. Where, in terms of your investigations, have you noticed a clear concern that needs to be addressed with regards to schools?
Schools are forcing parents to buy exclusively from the school or directing them to suppliers whom they prefer. And when we have such exclusivity, it means that the school is operating like a monopoly. And it has got the ability now to act independent of its competitors, suppliers or customers. Now they can charge whatever price they want to charge for that school uniform. Right. And that's detrimental to the parents who are unable to procure competitively. Now parents are struggling to exercise their right to choose which supplier they want to deal with.
So in essence, it would be to appreciate that you want, the Commission is looking to ensure that there is fair or equitable access to school uniforms for students.
Exactly.
Right.
That's what the Commission is looking at. We want parents to be able to choose, and we want also those suppliers which are competing for the same customer, that same student, right, that same parent, to be able to have access to markets. Okay. Because small and medium companies which also produce or distribute school uniforms are now not able to sell to these parents who are forced to buy exclusively from the school. Okay. So it's also affecting competition. Right. It's affecting the growth of the micro, small and medium enterprises, and that's affecting the economy as a whole.
We're going to take a short break and be right back with more Economic Forum. I'll be joined by Mr. Dennis Chinoda, who is the Chief Economist for the Competition and the Tariff Commission. Stay tuned, be right back with more. Welcome back to the second segment of Economic Forum, where we discuss all things relating to the economy. And today we're paying particular focus on a concern that has been raised by the general public around access to school uniforms and a seemingly clear position of monopolies that are being established by institutions of education. I'm going to be currently joined by Mr. Dennis Chinoda, who is the Chief Economist for the Competition Commission, who will be giving us a bit more insight in terms of the engagement that the Commission has taken with regards to schools. Chinoda, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Farai, for inviting us here.
All right. Now, previously when I was speaking to Madam Mashava, she was highlighting how the Commission has taken a significant step towards engaging institutions of education around the supply of school uniforms. A key concern is that there seem to be monopolies that are being developed. Give us a bit of an understanding of what's taking place.
The issue has been clearly articulated by Madam Mashava, and it is clear from our position that once a learner is enrolled at a particular school, they really have no choice but to be under the regulation or control of that particular school. Right. And in this instance, when one is enrolled at a particular school and is being forced to pay his school uniforms, there is a condition for getting a place. Our concern, especially as we start this season, the Form 1s, they're actually being forced to procure school uniforms on a conditional basis. So that's actually a concern for the Commission. And in some instances, even the Form 4s, you also find that they are being directed to particular retail outlets for the procurement of school uniforms. So that's a concern.
Let's look closely at what the previous model was when it came to acquisition of school uniforms before. Preferred suppliers are not a new concept when it comes to acquiring school uniform. What went wrong and how has it changed?
There really hasn't been much change. The practice has been there, and you actually realize that most parents are we have been coming to the Commission to say we have been silent about the issue. And we have noted that there has been a gap in terms of our enforcement activities, and this is one initiative that we have decided this time that we are going to be addressing that issue and hope it will be once and for all. So in terms of the laws and regulations, schools are allowed to also diversify into other revenue generating initiatives, selling school uniforms, selling farm produce and many other products as they can. But where the price issue comes into play, when the parents have no choice and are forced to procure only from the schools, and that's where the concern is really.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's pick up on that particular concern. There have been instances that have been put forward that you find schools charging exorbitant prices for uniform articles. Some prices ranging as far as 150 to 100 to 150 US dollars for one school article. And presuming that the schools, in essence, are benefiting from this particular acquisition of uniforms, seems to be where the concern is coming in from the Commission. Yes?
Yes, that's where the concern is. At one school, actually, we have just received a complaint that, for example, one school is selling a jersey for around 75 US dollars. Okay. And when you get into the market where there is competition, you'll find that the same jersey could be selling for around 25 US dollars. Right. And the prices, in our view, could be exorbitant, and it's really a pain for the parents who have to be working so hard to get the money to support education for their kids.
Right. Yeah. So just to be clear, as the schools, they have got a clear guideline in terms of the uniform that is required for the school. Yeah. However, the concern that is being raised by the Commission is that you can then not forcibly compel parents to purchase uniforms from the school, especially if the pricing model that is being used is not tallying up with the market. Yeah. How then do you look at being able to ensure, one, there's a favorable outcome towards the market, but at the same time also complying schools to ensure that they adhere to that?
In principle, you actually realize that in most other countries, Europe, some schools do not even require school uniforms. Right. So what we're actually saying is that a uniform shouldn't be one big cost to the parents. What is more important is that do the learners have the right caliber in terms of character, in terms of their enrollment requirements, academic performance. That is really key to the Commission. Mm-hmm. So when we are looking at school uniforms, we are saying this shouldn't be a hindrance to access to education at all. Uniforms should be as generic as possible. And you would actually realize that in some schools that we have observed here, even in Harare, they have got set standards to say if you are buying a certain material, they actually have clear specifications. And any manufacturer would then have to get those specifications and produce as per the school's standard.
Okay. Yeah. Now, from your investigations, have there been any positions or concerns raised by parents that their children have failed to access education purely because of the exorbitant price of school uniforms?
Yeah, at this stage, we are actually initiating this investigation. And from the complaints that we have received so far, in Chitungwiza, we have heard of a school where they have required that parents have to fork out $140 for the uniforms, and the parent couldn't afford. And also in Mashingo, we have received a complaint where at one school, a parent bought school uniforms in Harare. When they go to the school, they were forced again to enter into an arrangement where they are supposed to procure, to buy again, and they sign a commitment agreement to pay for the school uniform from the school.
All right, we'll take another break, and when I come back, I'll be speaking again to Madam Mashava, and she'll be highlighting to us what the Tariff Commission has taken on in terms of an initiative, a directive rather, to address the concerns that we've been discussing during the course of the segment. Stay tuned, we'll be right back with more. Welcome back to this final segment of Economic Forum. Feel free once again to be part of the conversation. Get a hold of us on our social media platforms. That's at Economic Forum Zimbabwe. And also send us your questions, comments, and contributions on our WhatsApp platform. Joined again by Madam Cecilia Mashava, who is the Assistant Director of Restrictive Practices Division in the Competition and Tariff Commission. Now, during the previous segment, we were speaking to Chief Economist Dennis Chinoda, and he was highlighting the current problem that we're finding within the schools. Appreciating that we seem to find schools who are trying to directly financially benefit, and I think also appreciating from what you highlighted earlier on, creating, if we could call it a quasi-monopoly to access school uniforms. What is the Tariff Commission doing directly to be able to address this particular issue?
The Competition and Tariff Commission has launched investigations into the practice because it's difficult for us to come up with solutions to this practice if we don't have our facts right. What we have currently are assumptions of what is happening in the market from our general knowledge of competition law and from theory regarding anti-competitive practice. And let me just say, as the Commission, from the cases that we've handled that are not in the school uniforms market, we've noted that there is a thin line between anti-competitive practice and corruption. Some of the anti-competitive practice that will show on the market might have some corruption issues behind the scenes.
Okay.
Like we don't know how schools are procuring their uniforms. We don't know if certain schools have got their own companies behind the scenes which manufacture school uniforms. Does this also open up an opportunity for engagement with, for instance, the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission? Definitely, if we find that there are such corruption activities taking place behind the scenes, we'll definitely get hold of them. But just that you note that this is just an assumption. So the investigations will inform us on exactly what's happening in the market, how schools are profiteering, how they are benefiting from this practice when indeed they're supposed to be providing a social service in the market. Let's cover a few grey areas here that hopefully you can give us clarity to. Are schools allowed to sell school uniforms? Currently, the legislation that we have in place in the country does not prohibit schools from engaging in extra-curriculum activities such as selling of school uniforms, which can assist schools in generating income, which they may use for other activities. So the Commission is there to ensure a win-win situation whereby schools can benefit from those extracurricular activities and also students also benefit from those, because sometimes certain parents might not have the time to move around town looking for suppliers, and a one-stop shop would be preferable for some parents, but that should be subject to them making the choice and not being forced by schools to buy from them. So basically what I'm saying is that schools are allowed to sell school uniforms, but they shouldn't engage in practices that are anti-competitive and practices that harm the students whom they are serving. Right. Now, appreciating legal frameworks, what legal measures can the Commission bring forward to be able to convince the schools to comply with a fair market position? In terms of the current legislations, the Commission has got powers to sanction parties into compliance through using the use of penalties. And there are also remedial orders that are provided for in terms of the Act, where the Commission can issue orders for companies to cease and desist from engaging in a particular practice, or we can direct parties to act in a certain manner. So usually penalties are used for conducts that are really harmful to the competition process and to consumer welfare, issues such as cartels, which are the most harmful anti-competitive practices. So for this particular case, I'm sure we understand that schools are offering a social services, and the idea is not to punish them, but just to put an end to the practice. So the Commission is definitely considering coming up with remedial orders and also collaborating with the Ministry of Education, which is the arm responsible for overseeing the operations of schools.
Right.
And we are hoping that we'll be able to come up with circulars that will be circulated to all schools, which will provide guidelines on how they should conduct the procurement of school uniforms so that we can allow the process of competition to operate within the procurement processes of schools.
Right. Are there any positions that the Commission is bringing forward to also, I think, open up the market, if I could put it like that, to be able to allow more players to also contribute towards the production of school uniforms for Zimbabwean school-going children?
Yes, definitely. The moment we direct schools not to force parents to buy from them, if we deal with the exclusivity practices that are currently prevalent, then other manufacturers will be able to produce and supply. They will have access to markets and they will be able to operate efficiently in markets in competition with the schools.
Okay. Now, very briefly in closing, currently we have entered into a school-going period. Parents have gone so far as to acquire school uniforms regardless of the situation. What then becomes the position going forward to address this particular issue, and what would your lead time be?
It's difficult for us to come up with timelines because our investigations, we have to do extensive investigations, extensive analysis, so that our decisions will not affect other players or they will not be detrimental to consumer welfare. So we try to balance between competition issues, efficiency issues, and public interest issues.
Okay.
So whatever decision we are going to come up with, we'll make sure that we've got a balance in terms of those factors.
Right.
And we are trying to expedite the investigation process and come up with solutions as soon as possible, but it's difficult to come up with timelines given that we've got quite a number of schools in the country.
Sure. Fully appreciate it. And we definitely would be following up on this particular investigation in due course to appreciate some of your findings. I'd like to thank my guest who's been joining me in studio, Madam Cecilia Mashava, who's the Assistant Director of the Restrictive Practices Division in the Competition and Tariff Commission. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
That's all the time that we do have here today on our Economic Forum. Once again, feel free to also keep engaging with us on our social media at Economic Forum Zimbabwe, and also send us your questions, comments, and contributions on our WhatsApp platform. My name is Farai Gwaze. Pleasant viewing. Good night.